Hi everyone, I'm Steve Main here with Brian Sanchez, Brian's Corner. So, if you want to reach out to me, you can get me at stevemain.com. Brian is at Fitness for 10. He's at the Fitness for 10 studio in Carson City, Nevada. He's out doing a lot of things. He's going to be moving into some other things. Who knows? We'll be doing some stuff maybe outside. And so we look forward to kind of the new stuff that we're doing with Brian. But that's where he is right now. So you know how to get a hold of us. And welcome, Brian.
Hey, thanks for having me again. Appreciate the opportunity to talk with everyone.
Okay, so let's talk about something that there's a lot of misconceptions about. Full range of motion. So again, what is someone's purpose? What are they doing? A lot of times you'll see some, including me, I don't do full range of motion. I may work my deltoids like this. That's not full range of motion. Is that bad? No, it depends on what I'm doing. So full range of motion, partial range of motion, but sometimes it's very important to do a full range of motion, depending on what your goals are with your age, if you're an athlete. Now, if you're a bodybuilder, bodybuilders don't do full range of motion all the time. They're trying to hit in, a specific little area on a specific muscle, or if they're bodybuilders, they want to be a big area, but it's isolated. So if you're cheating on your repetition, don't say, "Oh, I'm doing full range of motion and I'm working multiple." No, you're cheating and it's bad for your joints. So, Brian, relate this to some of your clients, exercising with full range of motion and proper technique, I guess.
Well, with full range of motion, again, a lot of people view it as a necessity for everything you do. I will flat out tell people when we're working with them when we want them to go full range of motion. Because there's always, to me, in full range of motion, the way I'll explain it is at the end of your movement, there's always a relaxation point because you have to fire and go in another direction to get the full range of motion. So at some point, there's an nth of a second where the muscles have to change direction and go. But there's other times where I want to maintain tension on the muscle for whatever reason. Like something we wouldn't be doing a full range of motion is like a pulsating squat, where I'm having somebody go into a squat and I'm trying to maintain time under tension on the muscle. I might have them pulsing in a 90-degree pulse, and they might, like to say, use your body. You might pulse down. You might pulse down 1, 2, 3, then come up. Where I'm not having them affect the whole thing as a full range of motion movement. We want to wear those muscles out. We want to tear and shred those muscles as much as we can, and we're trying to shock that muscle, so we're maintaining that time under tension. Similar things where I use or don't use full range of motion. I'm coaching a few clients here for bench press competition. And in some of this, we're just working on the release from chest through that point of movement where you can barely get it to start striking and come up again. So we're working loads in that soft region, or the part where you go from down to up again in for lack of better verbiage, in the movement. Or we might have somebody where we're doing the bench press and I have them hold the weights up high and I'm overloading them. Let's say their maximum's 175. I put 225 and I'm only having them do like 2-inch pulsers. The reason for that isn't necessarily to develop the strength. I want their grip to get used to that tension and that heavy weight. I want their brain to accept that it's okay to hold this in my hands. I'm working other regions of that lift. Deadlifts, working on clients who want to perform at a higher rate of deadlift, doing hang squats as opposed to full squat or hang deadlifts instead of full deadlifts, where we're dropping just below their knees and we're just working the hip action and we're using that as opposed to going all the way to the ground. So full range of motion, there's reasons why we don't always do it. The hook with that, though, is full range of motion a lot of the times is a cheat. And what I mean by that is a lot of people will overload the weight that they can handle. And let's just say bench press is one of the most common I see. I see a lot of guys come in here and they will train, and I see them regularly in here where they'll put entirely too much weight on their bar, and they're coming off the bench and they're dropping it down 4 to 5 inches and pressing it up, and they're calling that a complete revolution of a motion, and they don't come but maybe 18 inches close to their chest. Where in theory, if we wanted them to compete, we'd want them to bring it all the way down, pause, and come all the way back up. That's a cheat. You're lying to yourself that that's your overall strength. Anybody can hold 500 pounds up in theory, but not everybody can truly bench press 500 pounds, if that makes sense. Another big area where I see this, if I'm trying to incorporate my lower back, my core, my upper glutes maybe, into a back exercise, I might lean way back on a lat pull down, or it's a way to do a pull up without doing it, if you will. What you see a lot of people do though is they overload it heavy and they use their body and they come all the way back and they're in a lat pull down, which is supposed to be an upright movement where you're pulling straight down, and they're rowing into their body because they don't realize that they're overloaded and using too much weight. So that's a cheat. When they think they're doing a lat pull down of 170 pounds, what they're doing is they're using 170 pounds of their body weight to get it moving in a certain direction, and then they row the machine as opposed to sitting up straight and pulling, I guess, straight down in their motion. That's what I mean by cheat. So you have to know why you're doing it. If you're just doing full workouts and you're doing workouts such as trying to lean out the body, I would be going full range of motion, trying to make that muscle long all the time. If I'm trying to volumize your muscle, puff it out a little bit, yeah, we're going to be doing all kinds of things where you might not even do full range of motion. I just had a client in doing what I call Urlachers, in which it's similar to a Arnie shoulder press, where you're coming out and up with your dumbbells and extending all the way up, except we're not going that high. We're just going to tension. So you're here to here, and you never release the tension in the workout. We're doing it because we're trying to shred that fiber and maintain that tension on the muscle. Now, let's also say, after that, we go full range of motion. Does that make sense, Steve?
It does. And I would just conclude with, if you're an athlete or if you're an older person, full range of motion is what you want to do. So that's going to help your flexibility,
Correct.
your range of motion. You want a greater range of motion. So athletes and older people almost always want to work through full range of motion. Now, like you say, don't use an excuse to cheat. That would be swinging weight.
Yes.
When you're swinging the weight, when you're doing a lat pull and you're doing this and you're swinging, that's just cheating. That's not full range of motion. And you want to be able to isolate muscles, but multiple joint movements and full range of motion movements are what most people are going to recommend for athletes and older people. Multiple joint movements, which means you're working more muscles at a time. And there's explosive movements like power cleans. That's an explosive, quick movement, but you got to keep your technique right, and you're not cheating. You can cheat on a lot of exercise. Bench press, when you lift your butt up off that bench, that's just cheating. That's not working more muscles. That's probably tweaking yourself. Not good, and you're cheating. So there's a difference between all these things. I would just add that.
I think that's important, and I don't think people realize when they're lifting up their butt, they're basically, or they're doing it what I call a bench stack, they're basically creating a decline press situation so that they can lift the weight they put on the bar. They just don't realize it. Anybody that knows bench pressing knows the easiest one to do is the decline. So on a flat situation, when you make that arch, you put your body in that position, and it makes it easier to move that muscle. That's just the way I look at it. But the other important part too, Steve, is we have to remember, if we train our bodies always with a short range of motion, we will shrink our muscle. It will not be elongated. And that's why for athletes, older people, or people that want to really keep that lean look, that's why it's so important. If you're only doing a third of your presses or a third of your range of presses, and you do that for 4 or 5 years, you'll be walking around like a gunfighter because your muscles kind of shrink up a little bit. They're not long. You can't get way out there in your reach. Just something to think about.
Absolutely. And when you mean shrink up, you don't mean make the muscle smaller. You mean the length of it.
The length of it,
the
correct.
flexibility of it.
Correct.
So all great input about, exercise and when to use full range of motion. What should the range of motion be? So thanks, Brian. Great tips. That's Brian Sanchez. Thanks for your input.
Hey, we'll see you next time.